Howdy, guys. This is the first episode of the Sensei Showdown show, and I have with me Mr. Joe Karpinski and Mr. Nathan Murphy, and they're gentlemen that I've known for quite a bit of time, and I think that they've got a lot to say. But first, let's start with Joe. Kind of give us what are your kind of history, your instructor that started you out, why'd you start, how old were you, all that pertinent information.
Right on, man. Well, again, Archie, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Well, just like you guys, I started with IKCA Kempo. My father was under the Karate Connection. He originally had started with a gentleman named William DiCarlo at the Black Rose Kempo Association, and he had studied a version of American Kempo. Before that, he had studied Wing Chun and some other stuff. And anyway, in the late 90s, my dad had a karate school, and it was an IKCA affiliated school. And anyway, I learned the IKCA Chinese Kempo system from my father. I later on joined the service. I joined the Marine Corps, and I got stationed in San Diego at age 19. I was stationed at San Diego for a solid 2 weeks, and then I looked for the nearest Kempo school. And that school was American Family Kempo, run by Master Gary Wilson, under the Dave Hebler lineage. Phenomenal martial artist. He had a high reputation for training police officers and military members and stuff of that nature. He worked with the San Diego police for quite some time. So I learned the American Kempo system from him. I've been a member of him and his association, his school, for over the past 10 years, since 2011. And I still train with him regularly. I obtained the rank of 5th degree black belt ultimately so far in American Kempo. And believe it or not, I moved to Ridgecrest, California. There's a Navy base up there that I took a job working as a government contractor. So Naval Air Weapons Station, China Lake. So I went up there and I immediately decided that I wanted to, teach on the side or whatnot, because I was working as a bouncer, and I had a friend of mine who saw that I knew Kempo, and he was a bouncer that worked with me. His name's John Ivinson. He ultimately got his black belt under me. But anyway, we started training, and I started teaching people, and so on and so forth. And I ended up moving back to San Diego to take a job down there, working at one of the military bases down back in San Diego. And before I left, I wanted my students to. I looked for the nearest Kempo school around there. So you had Brian Antak, who was in Bakersfield, but you had Frank Bacara, who lived in Cal City. So anyway, I loaded up all the students. We all went together down there, and I started working with Frank, and I pretty much gave him all my students. A lady named Jennifer, my student Johnny, continued to go there, and so on and so forth. But anyway, Mr. Bacara introduced me. He was like, "Hey, you definitely need to come back into the IKCA, blah 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 blah." So, the 90s was kind of a crazy time. So I had more or less house rank under my dad, not actually legitimate through the IKCA. So I went through and I actually did all the testing with the IKCA to get my rank honored. And I continued with them so far. So during that period of time, I also studied Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I got my blue belt under a gentleman named Joe Sikowski. He was a black belt under Dan Camarillo out of Bakersfield. And I also was a black belt in the Marine Corps martial arts program under another student and very good friend of mine named Jonathan Andrade. He's a staff sergeant, and he was a drill instructor, real hardcore. Just the epitome of a Marine. He was super good. And anyway, he actually was training me in McMap while we were on deployment. And after the McMap stuff, he was like, I want to get into Kempo. He's I've trained with him on and off for years, and he's really, really good martial artist. But anyway, pretty much all of my friends have been former military guys and stuff of that nature, if not active duty. And that's how it's something we all kind of like to do, all kind of like rough, tough type guys, and, all of them, I've been the only Kempo guy that they've ever known. And, so, if you don't know any better, it looks good. So, they'll just think I look flashy, But in all honesty, I try to incorporate with what I teach nowadays, a kind of a mixture of all of it. I keep my base, the Chinese Kempo system, because I personally like it the best. That's what my dad taught. That's what is the most familiar with me. I love American Kempo. I love the forms. I love a lot of the techniques, but I like teaching them as alterations because there's a lot of techniques in the American Kempo system that are just absolute garbage. Any technique that ends in sacrifice, that's what it is, a sacrifice that it might fucking work. Like excuse my language, like a Hail Mary, you know? Like,
oh man, he messed up the language filter.
I'm sorry. But anyway, excuse me. But anyway, that's kind of like my generic, overall how I got into it. It's always got me. Everybody that I know in the martial arts community, like Chuck Sullivan, we all know. All of us are, IKCA brothers. Chuck Sullivan's 90 years old, and he's still doing it. Every Tuesday he has a class, and he's still kicking butt and moving around. And,
Awesome.
My American Kempo instructor is, going on 60. I mean, and he's a big old boy, moves like lightning. I mean, it's like we do the 2-man set. If I don't have that block up quick enough, he's taking my head off, So I've been very, and then my dad was actually a little guy. He was only about 5'7", 5'6", 150 pounds, soaking wet. But I mean, the way that he could generate force was just absolutely phenomenal, And so I've just been very fortunate to have really good instructors. Even my jiu-jitsu coach, he was a little guy. He was smaller than me, a little Polish dude. And it was funny because we became friends because both of our names were Joe. We were both Polish. We both had red Dodge Rams, and it was pretty interesting. And he was a Marine. He was a Marine as well. I mean, he was just a phenomenal grappler. It's just I've always loved seeing what different people do and how they do it. And that's the beautiful thing about Kempo in particular is that everybody does it different. So if you just pick and choose, the things that apply to you and work well for you, it just works, So I'm a very adamant instructor when it comes to doing things that are functional and doing things that actually work. There's so many karate teachers that they've never been in a fight. They've just been doing karate for a long time, and so they get ranked and they do this, and it's like it's great, you always respect the rank, but just like in the military, it's like you respect the rank, you may not necessarily agree with the person, you know what I mean? So, but yeah, that's just kind of my overall generic thing. And that's why I don't really teach children. I've only had like 1 or 2 kids from, time to time, but I didn't plan on ever actually really teaching. That was never like my goal. But Mr. Wilson made a deal with me that as long as I taught on Fridays and I taught sparring and taught a class, like he makes all of his black belts teach, which I find extremely powerful tool to building you. If you want to learn the system, no matter what it is you study, whether it's judo, jiu-jitsu, kempo, Shotokan, whatever, if you want to get better at it, the only way you're going to do that is to truly teach, to have people question you and ask why and ask this, and like a lot of traditional styles, it's frowned upon to ask questions. But as we all know as kempoists, like if you can't explain why, then there's really no point of even doing it, like not just because I said so. That's not a legitimate answer. And I always encourage my students, even if I leave or they leave or whatever, just if you go to a school, you should be able to ask why. And if they tell you because I said so, then you need to step right out of there and leave because there's no actual functioning reasoning or logic behind what it is you're showing or what it is you're teaching. I teach what I know for a fact works, So, and I mean, I love jujitsu, but I don't want to be on the ground. And I believe it or not, McMath, a lot of people don't like McMath, Marines that studied it, they call it sloppy jujitsu. But it is sloppy jujitsu because I'm doing it with combat boots on, and I want to be able to kick you off of me. If I can't get the choke really quick, I'm going to kick you off of me to get back up. You know what I mean? Right. So that's why we do it that way. So I don't really teach a whole lot of jujitsu, but when my students get through about green, brown belt, I teach them the basic Marine Corps style like grappling stuff because it's just simple and it works. If it isn't simple and it doesn't work, there's no point in doing it. If you look at a lot of these, even jujitsu has transformed over the years. Like we talked about the early days of the UFC, everybody was style versus style. But if you look at the way that they do jujitsu and you look at the jujitsu now, I mean, they're doing all this crazy spin stuff on their head and all these crazy different guards and crazy this. It's like that's great if you want to study that stuff, and everybody, just like in Kempo and Jiu-Jitsu, they have their own styles. But I believe that it's like if it's not quick and instantaneously, it's not really going to work in a real fight. I've been a bouncer for a long time, and I've gone to bars for a long time. I have yet to see somebody do any of that shit in a bar fight. Right. That's just my own opinion.
So that's what I really like about the Karate Connection material is they took it down to 60 techniques, one master form. There's a couple of sets that are in there.
I love it.
you know, it's direct to the point, you know, but as we all know, Mr. Sullivan, he's not about the extra stuff. He's about how quick can I get this fist to that target. You know what I mean?
That's right.
You know, within the technique.
And Chuck was a Marine. He understands, you know, threat elimination. Like you gotta take them out, you know?
You know, the story I like that Chuck tells is one night he was teaching crossing talon, the wrist grab. And he goes up to a brand new student and he goes, okay, if I grab your wrist, what are you going to do? And the guy just kind of looked at him and went, boom, and hit him right in the face. And he thought Mr. Sullivan was going to block this strike. And Chuck goes, ah. And the guy's just apologizing like crazy. And he goes, I'm so sorry. And he goes, sorry for what? You just taught me a valuable lesson. So then he just went directly into, okay, you're grabbing my wrist. You've dedicated that hand. Bang. But that's the kind of thought process that he brings to the table, and I really appreciate
Absolutely. So do I, man. Believe it or not, about, I want to say probably a month ago, I was with Chuck's for his class, and we were doing a technique line, and he caught me off guard and did a double hand grab from behind, right? And I can't remember the name of the American Kempo technique. I'd have to look it up, but it's the one where you come back, pull them down, you know, what is it called? I don't know, but I tried to do an American Kempo technique, and halfway through, he just shoved me. And he was like, what are you doing? And I was like, you know, I was like, it didn't work. And he's like, you know what you do? He's like, you kick him in the kneecap, and then you know, and I was like, you're absolutely right. Like, that technique truly does not work. You know, and it was the first, you know, I'd been caught off guard, and I immediately went to it. And, you know, when I turned around, I can't remember, I have to look up the name of the technique, but it's two-hand wrist grab from behind. And you step forward and use the momentum to hit him and then turn around. And it didn't work. I couldn't get it. And Chuck's half my size, you know, so I was like, I'm never doing that technique again.
Well, Joe, how many techniques are stuck in your head? Because you got the IKCA system. We've got 55 unique ones to us, and then the extra 5 for yellow, so 60. And then and then Americans, what, 156?
There's 154 base techniques.
Okay.
Without extensions. And I believe it or not, I actually I was never tested on the full system, because my American Kempo comes from the Dave Hebler lineage. And Dave Hebler, believe it or not, was around the same time frame that Chuck Sullivan was, you know, and back then, you know, it was still, you know, a lot less than what it was. You know, if you take someone like Chuck and Dave, who learned Kempo in the like 50s and 60s, you know, going into the 70s, and then you look at the Kempo from the 70s and 80s, and then into the 90s, like, it just continuously got bigger. But the reason why, I mean, Ed Parker was the first one to ever have a commercial karate school, you know, and guess what? The more material there is, the more testing fees, the longer they're there, you know, the more of this. And then, I mean, there's 2 degrees of green, 3 degrees of brown, you know, I mean, they just keep adding to it. And then, you know, all the extensions that they go on to it. Mr. Wilson, my American Kempo instructor, told me that, check it out, man. If it brown belt, you need extensions for orange belt techniques. You don't understand Kempo, because there's 3 phases of a technique: the ideal phase, the what if phase, and the formulation phase. Formulation phase being grafting, and, you know, being spontaneous, what we call in IKCA blending and borrowing. So it essentially defeats the purpose in doing all that. And not to mention, it even says in the Infinite Insights that the extensions are meant to teach additional principles and concepts to the original techniques. Now, a lot of them, if you take like shielding hammer and a couple other techniques, they do a front crossover and 2 double strikes to the sternum, which goes against everything that we do, which is, if you strike high, you check low. If you strike low, you check high. You know, I mean, it just defeats the purpose in a lot of it. And a lot of them don't work. You know, you're better off if you can whip out 5 swords or Crenshaw high 5 or whatever other technique, and then go right into the next technique and be spontaneous about it. That's what really matters. You're not going to remember all this stuff. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I know a lot of them. I've gone through the whole system. I never actually had to test on it. You know, the way Mr. Wilson does it is he teaches, you know, the Hebler version of Kempo, and then, you know, after black belt, you know, or 3rd degree black belt, you know, he'll you know, whatever else you wanted to learn. So I'm one of the only students who've learned, you know, long 5, long 6, all the extra stuff, you know, all the sets, you know. So I mean, I enjoy it, but I did it more or less to just add to my knowledge. And it's funny, because my dad used to tell me, because he studied it in reverse. He studied American Kempo, then went to Chinese Kempo. He was one of those who converted back in the day. And then,
Right.
he was like, you don't need to know all that stuff. And then I did it oppositely. I learned Chinese Kempo, then went back to American Kempo. But then either way, like I believe that less is more. And I really have, I got a lot of heart and soul in the Chinese Kempo system because I can teach me personally, like you take a technique like like the heading of a dragon, right? Then I can teach you 4 alternatives, shield and sword, circling destruction, returning mace, repeating mace. I can teach all of those, incorporate as alternatives with it. So it just happens to work best for me, Well,
here's a thought or a question leading into that. It's kind of like as instructors and as senseis, looking at like what's best for our students and what's going to serve them the best. I look at the 3 of us, and we're all pretty big nerds when it comes to martial arts. So I mean, if you're a lifer and like us, we're 20, 30 years into this game, and it's like, I got time for long 7. I got time for 6 and 5. And like, if I want to go and learn that. But when I'm looking at, I got a junior high kid or a high school kid that's getting his butt kicked in school because he's getting bullied. It's like, what is the most essential lessons I can teach him? Like, when I get a new student in, I don't even get into like the traditional, like, here's how you do the formal salute and stuff. Yeah, I wait a little bit, which maybe I should do that sooner. But I'm like, here's how to not get punched in the face, because that is very important. Here's how you do an outward block so you don't get your teeth smashed. I mean, like that's like our I guess our duty, I guess, as instructors, is to make sure that we're giving them the most valuable lessons first. I was talking to my friend Norm Lane once about this, and he was saying that the average student, if you look at the industry standards, average student lasts in a martial arts school for about 2 years. So it's like, you only get them for 2 years and you save all your best stuff for years 3 to 5. It's like most people will never ever see your good valuable stuff. So it's like, what happens at that white yellow belt level? Because that's going to be ought to be the meat and potatoes of everything we do. And I would say American Kempo kind of fits into that too. If you get your first couple belt levels, I'm not ranked in American Kempo, but I've been exposed to like some of the 5-0 Kempo guys and seen some of their stuff. And I would say, just looking at it from an outsider, your first 2 or 3 belt levels, that's the meat and potatoes. That's the most important part of the art. If you only went that far, you're probably going to be okay. It
really is. It really is. I totally agree with that. Absolutely. Because I mean, like, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was saying it's kind of like that. I think it's the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule. It's like that, like 80% of the benefit is going to come from 20% of the work. So that 20%, that first 20% of the concepts, basics, techniques, that's going to be 80% of the value that you're going to get from probably any martial art. I'd have to think that through, but I think maybe that's true. Jiu-jitsu was that way for me too. I did some jiu-jitsu, didn't make it to blue because I'm not great at it. But what I was learning with those guys is like, you once you got beyond the basics, a lot of jiu-jitsu had relevance to sport jiu-jitsu, where you're trying to trap dudes that know exactly what you're doing and still getting caught by the same armbar, choke, or ankle lock or something. But you just take the average dude and they take you to the ground. It's like, you've got your basics, your body positioning, and understand like the hierarchy of like moving from being mounted to side mount to guard to whatever. It's like, you really don't need a whole lot to be functional. 80-20 rule. I don't know where I was going with that.
Mr. Nathan.
Hey, what's up?
Give us a little bit of your history and background.
Hello, I'm Nathan. Nice to see you guys.
Nice to see you, Kempo.
Yeah, I just jumped right into the conversation. I'm like, they don't want to hear my. Okay,
no,
anyway.
That's all right.
All right. So hey, my name is Nathan Murphree. I am IKCA Kempo black belt instructor under Chuck Sullivan. I've been doing martial arts for a little over 30 years. Started as a little kid in 1992. Actually got started because I had some attention and energy problems in school. And rather than go on some medication, my mom said, no, we're going to try something different. So I ended up training in martial arts to help get self-discipline and work on my focus. So kind of coming into this as a kid, I typically work mostly with children. So like a little different than Joe. Joe has this very awesome, what would you call it? Almost like a boutique, like martial arts, like private instructor kind of thing. I don't mean, I actually think that's really awesome, because I mean the one-on-one attention he can give is fantastic. So as
he's
a
man in high
model,
demand.
yes, he is, absolutely.
Thank you.
As a kind of a different teaching model, I work with like group classes, mostly with children. I would say most of my students are probably elementary school, junior high, and maybe a few high schoolers. So I mean, like a lot of like non-adults. And we were talking like, I think when it comes to, especially with Kempo, it's like you're not, let me think about how to word this. It's not trying to sound more intelligent and trying to be smarter sounding, which I think a lot of times we get into as Kempo because we have all this terminology and all these handles that we can use. I think it's, if you can simplify it down and make a 6 or 7 year old understand the concept, like that's like the true intelligence of the art. And that's where Joe was talking about when you become a teacher of the art, you kind of teach it to yourself a second time. Getting to learn and articulate that. So I'm working with my daughters. They're in my class. One's 18 and my youngest is 5. And working with my daughter Lucy, who's 5, trying to explain delayed sword and sword destruction, and her understanding it is just, it's awesome. I love like getting to see the kids get the concepts and understand that. I got off track. Where was I? Okay, yeah, started as a kid. Clearly, some of the attention issues might still be there. But
So
they got better.
You started
But
about
then,
11, 12 years old, or
yeah, I was
Taekwondo?
about 9 or 10. Yeah, it was a Taekwondo club in Mississippi. We moved around a lot. My dad was in the Air Force, and right out of the Air Force, he got a job with the Lockheed Martin space program. So we were in North California.
Oh, right on, dude.
Yeah, we ended up relocating to Corinth, Mississippi, northeast Mississippi. That was my first club. Was at a YMCA in that area. I had a blast. Absolutely loved it. And I wasn't really a natural athlete. I was very slow, and I was easily distracted. So, which again, why I needed this. But so I was kind of a bench warmer in baseball. I didn't really excel at that. But so when I got to like training martial arts, there's no bench warmers. Like everybody's active in the class the whole time. Everybody gets to participate 100%. So like I found my thing. Became my quick passion. That plus you got to think too, back in the day you had Karate Kid movies were only a few years old. Ninja Turtles had just become a thing, and those were awesome. And like I grew up on all the old Chuck Norris movies and the early '80s like the Van Damme movies and Speakman movies, and it was the best, man. So it's like, how could you not do this? This stuff was great. So just as soon as I had an opportunity, I was like, okay, this is my thing. Did that for several years, and eventually the government cut the funding on the program, so there's no space jobs in Mississippi aside from that. So we were gonna have to. Dad was looking for other work, and I remember I was 12, went in for my green belt test, and talked to my instructor after I passed my test and said, "Hey, we're gonna have to stop lessons because my family can't afford it right now." So he said, "Hey, wait a minute. Why don't you help me work and hold pads and teach kata in the kids class, and you can train for free." And I was hooked at that point because to have somebody kind of invest in me like that as a kid, I knew exactly what I wanted to do from that point forward. So I've been training, and then I got into teaching as absolutely quick as I could. A few years later, continued moving around, for jobs and stuff, relocated back to Southern Missouri, got in with the IKCA and got ranked and got to meet Chuck and Vic and go to every seminar they had in the Midwest and South. Went down to the Louisiana seminars like every summer as a kid growing up. It was a blast. And I started teaching private lessons in my backyard when I was 18. I was just finishing up high school, and I would just have friends come over and just start teaching them Kenpo. And eventually we worked that into a program through my local church, and we got to use a rec room, and we had like 30, 40 students for like about 5 years. I mean, it ebbed and flowed. And then I relocated to St. Louis, lived there for about a decade, and had a small club there for a while. Also cross-trained, did some jiu-jitsu and some Shotokan. I just had a blast. A lot of times it was me just looking for sparring partners, and I would just stay because I had fun. And just martial arts nerds are the best nerds, man. They're the coolest people.
Right.
like most of my best friends, I'm like, if they're one of my best friends, they probably had a gi on at some point. Either they trained at one point with me, or they still train, or we sparred at some point, and they're my buddies. It's easy to like those people. And a few years back, relocated to Central Illinois. So I'm about 90 minutes east of St. Louis, and we just opened up our dojo here a few years ago. So we got a small little dojo here in town. Tiny little, 500 square foot mat area. It's fun, and we teach small classes, and I do that with my daughter Allie. She helps me teach my kids classes, and then Lucy's now just coming up into the system, getting ready for yellow belt pretty soon, and it's a blast, man. I love doing this stuff.
Awesome.
It's to see the benefit that people get especially in those first few belt levels, and the confidence that some of these kids can get from learning how to protect themselves is invaluable. And like, I mean, it's a side hustle, it's a business, but it's like, I think I get more value out of seeing these kids succeed than I do in terms of like financial success. It's awesome, man. I love teaching. Like I said, I do really love working with kids, but I have a very vested interest in that because, like I said, I'm working with my own daughters, so that's gotten me very interested in it. And then also, being that kid myself, kind of coming up to the arts, like that was really helpful. I realized it's a different animal. Like you have to do things quite a bit differently when you're working with younger kids, especially when you work with a very sophisticated martial art like Kenpo, because there's so much to it. A lot of it is slowing the pace down and taking those concepts and breaking them down very like specifically one by one, because without it's hard to dump things on them too much, and that's something I'm always still playing with. But that's maybe something we talk to about, like teaching strategies and stuff kind of as we go on. But did I answer the question?
Yeah. You've answered it perfectly. One thing I wanted to ask is, through teaching your daughters, have you noticed that maybe your relationship has gotten better? Or, what's the dynamic there? Are you?
Yeah, it's I've had some friends that have taken their kids to my school before that were also trained martial arts, but like, I don't want to teach my kid. You teach my kid. I'm like, yeah, okay. Well, out here, it's like the next school over is like, I think a half hour away. So, I mean, like there's not a practical way for me to do that. So it's like my kids are stuck with me. Plus, I really want them to learn Kenpo because black belt before you can date is a house rule and a hashtag black belt before you can date. And I'm sandbagging them. I'm adding extra belts, extra ranks. We, all kinds of low level, advanced level, green belt, all that. So it'll be a while.
Sound like a good dad.
That's. I just want to sleep at night when she goes off to college. Like to know that she could kill people with her like pinky finger. That's the goal. Relationship wise, I say it's good because we've got a chance to bond and over common interests. I've taken the girls to, well, not Lucy. I've taken Allie to tournaments. I've taken her out to California and had her train with my teachers and train with Chuck and get to see the home base and all the cool people there. So that was really fun to get to share that, because this has been such a big part of my life, something I've been doing since before I can remember. That it really defines, I think, who we become as people after a while. So to share that with your kids is really special. And Archie, I know you're doing that too, right? Your son's in.
I'm trying.
Your kids.
I'm trying. That my kids have done a little bit, but in some respects, nobody wants to learn from dad.
It's hard because you got to wear different hats. So like I'm sensei at the dojo, and I tell them, call me that, not to be a jerk, just because you need to frame the conversation, frame the experience differently. Because at home with dad, we do like pro wrestling type stuff, which is not quite Kenpo, but Lucy will waylay me, and then I got a
Joe's language
slammer on the bed.
I love wrestling, man.
So
hey, if Kenpo don't work, I'm gonna hit him with a chair.
Well, I've had some friends explain that too. They have the same thing, like trying to frame the environment a little differently, because like kids used to coming in, playing with dad, goofing around, and we still do that sometimes, obviously. But it's like then when it's class time and you bow in, it's like we have to have a different set of rules here. We need to make sure that we're behaving in a way that's productive and safe and like respectful for everybody. And that is a challenge, like with your own kids for sure. So I mean, it's tough sometimes, but myself, it's also
For myself, it's like having my kids here. I feel that I hold them to a standard that maybe I don't hold my other students to. I don't know if you've expressed that, if you've experienced that yourself.
I tell them all the time, your name's on the door, so make sure you act like it.
Right. And it's like, the school here, it's not open to make us a bunch of money, but we do need the people in the school to keep the lights on, keep the doors open.
Sure.
And if the kids are running around like crazy, acting like savages, then that sometimes will take that money out of the kitty that keeps the place open. And so it's something, that I need to work on myself. I recognize that. What are some struggles that you guys, some things that you feel that you need to work on in your own art, in your own martial arts journey through teaching, and some struggles that you guys have found that you've had to overcome, or that you're still
I'm kind of finding like for me, and especially working with kids, and this is for anybody that's getting into working with kids that hasn't done it before, I would say maintaining the discipline has more of a value to it than I thought before. It's kind of like a swinging pendulum where like I grew up in some very hard, like ex-military, like forget to say yes, sir, and you got to do 30 push-ups, and they'll open up all the windows in the middle of summer and let all the heat come in so you're sweating your butt off, that kind of stuff. Like that was my experience coming up as a kid, and it was hard. So then when I got into teaching, I'm like, we're gonna be the chill, cool sensei, we're gonna have some fun. But I realized then when I did that, like some of those little kids will eat you alive, man. If you don't have that structure around what you're doing, like they will get you. And then like you lose control of the class and then it can be a mess. So I've over the like years I've gotten older, like now I'm 40. Um, I'm learning that there was a bit of a wisdom to some of the old structures and mentality. So I've kind of brought back some of the Japanese traditions, like, using terms like sensei and like bowing on and off the mats and like really trying to like I said, frame the environment to where when you're here to learn martial arts, you're here to learn Kenpo. That's what we're going to do. So like we're taking some of that structure. I think the kids thrive on that more than I realized they would,
Yeah. What about
So
yourself,
that's,
Joe?
yeah.
Well, so it's funny because what you guys are both talking about is, being dads, teaching your kids. I was that kid who was taught by my dad. And I'm going to tell you, I thought when I was a kid, I thought my dad was such a jerk all the time. Like I didn't even want to do karate for a little bit because he was harder on me than everybody else. And my father was a former Army veteran during the Vietnam time. He was,
Wow.
like 71 to 73. So he was just like one of those hard charging dudes, I mean, like, but with me, he wouldn't like let me work with everybody else. Like he would train with me and then group class time would come and he'd tell me to go in the back and work on the form. And so like, I used to just be like, he'd punish me with karate. Like, I'll tell you what, I was 13 years old, 14, maybe something like that. And, he caught me smoking. I was smoking cigarettes and I would flick them out my window. And, anyway, so one day he's cleaning the yard or raking or whatever. And he brings me outside and he's like, "Hey, moron, he was like, you threw the cigarette butts right outside your door." He was like, "How dumb could you be?" And I was like, "Oh God." So I lived on a street that went to it was like a main road that went in towards a military base called Fort Pickett. We were living in Virginia at the time. And so anyway, he was like, "Well, guess what? I'm going to show you I'm going to show you how good that smoking is." Even though he smoked, he was such a hypocrite. And I was like, "Oh, screw you," and he made me run all the way there and back, as he follows in the truck, I mean, my dad was really hard on me. And when I was a kid, I didn't really like even doing karate. But I was very fortunate because in my high school years, the way that everything had worked out with my family, me and my father lived alone. And it was just me and my dad. We lived together. And that's when it really kind of like shifted. And to be honest with you, like my father became my best friend. Like he actually treated me like an adult, like a student. And he taught me what it is I needed to learn. And, I had some issues at school with some, people bullying me because I was kind of like short and fat. And then in my freshman year, I got taller and leaned out. And then, but I'm only 5'10". I'm not that big, so anyway, but I did ROTC and so on and so forth. And my dad really took the time to train me. And he put everything into training me. And I was really fortunate for it. And, my father passed away, when I was about 17, 18 years old. So I was just and I think that he knew it was coming, but he put everything into me and it made me the martial artist I am today. And I'm very thankful for it. But, my high school years, like my father and I became like best friends. But granted, like you're teaching your daughters, it's a little bit different father to daughter. But probably not. I mean, I have no idea. It's not me. I don't have any kids, and I don't teach a lot of kids, so I don't know. But I know that my dad was really hard on me. But I mean, it worked out though. But one of the things that I learned though, and like the question is, what do I try to do to be to better myself? It's actually just the basics. It's discipline. It's actually I've spent quite a bit of time teaching, so I know the IKCA system back and forth. I know, the American Kempo stuff. I like to incorporate it with it back and forth, but it's just the basic stuff. Like I should run a couple times a week to make sure my cardio is better. I should unfortunately, I smoke. I know damn well I should not be smoking. That is like the worst thing I could possibly do. And I've been trying to cut back. I really have. It's like, it's just going out and doing the things that I know I should do. I have a bob dummy. I know I should, a couple times a week, I need to be beating on that thing, be doing timed rounds. I know that I have a pull-up bar. I know I should be working out more. It's like being in the Marine Corps and doing all these things for years. Like I have beat myself up. Like there's been times where I've like trained nonstop. Like, I power lifted for a long time, and I was really big into the weight room when I was in the Marines, and even getting out, it's like, I've been in better shape. My biggest thing is like focusing on my diet and actually working out and doing the other things. Knowing karate isn't what I need to work on. It's the conditioning and, actually being more of an example. That's what I try to work on, So that's just what I say. But
I think it's taking that growth mindset like that it takes to become a black belt, like knowing how to put the work in, like, and then applying that to the other areas of your life. So like you said, like diet, nutrition, weight training, education, like all those things can get better because you know how, like I think learning something like Kenpo, you learn how to learn. So
exactly.
and you learn that you have the tools, and if you can do this, then that can't be that hard. I mean, a diet is hard, obviously, because you're on 24/7. I would say diet and nutrition is probably one of the hardest things to master out of any of the stuff that we talked about. Because it's easy to go in the gym and kill it for an hour, on the weights, and it's awesome to get in
but
a couple hours.
The 12-pack of beer and the Big Mac on the way home, what's up,
dude? I mean, yeah, I'll tell you, it's like I kind of felt attacked when I started tracking my own macros. I'm like, oh, that's why I'm fat. It's like, you get the tools and you start to learn, but it's like, with diet and nutrition, you do have to go on 24/7, and that's the hardest thing. That's where I don't know. I never want to say never, because like I've done some weird stuff, but like I am fascinated with the sport of bodybuilding. I'm not sure I'd ever want to compete, but like the discipline it takes for those guys to get down there and peak to that one competition day and to get down to like those like tiny single digit fat percentages. It's like, that's impressive. Like the amount of I mean, I respect the discipline because I see it in my own art, Kenpo, and like what we do, and seeing that in other people, whether it's, it's music, it's visual arts like painting, drawing, whether it's other sports like bodybuilding or something like, or powerlifting, like that's some really cool stuff. And you definitely, you can kind of see those common threads in what we do. But
my problem is like, I either work out really hard and I eat like crap, or I eat great and then I just like don't have the energy to work out. It's so hard to balance the two.
Balance, huh?
It is a tough balance, and I think for a lot of people, it's like individually, like what works best for you personally, because there's so many different ideas out there. Like, I do more of like kind of low carb keto kind of thing most of the time, and I would say that's probably not for everybody. I mean, it works well for me because it helps me stay more disciplined and stay away from some trigger foods. Because it's like growing up with brothers and growing up in the age of Ninja Turtles, apparently pizza was, that's what you eat.
Life.
You can't be a ninja without the pizza. I learned this from the Turtles. And like growing up with my brothers, it was kind of like you were the quick or the hungry. So I associate eating pizza with uncomfortable full and like feeling like I'm gonna like be sick because I ate too much, because I realized, if I was going to get enough pizza, I had to be faster than my brother. So I would just slam it down, and I got really good at it. We'd go to these pizza buffets. We'd have competitions, like we were trying to put them in chapter 11. Like, I bet I can eat this whole large pizza before you can. So we would do that. So it was all karate and all pizza all the time. So it's like, there's some foods I can't eat without like having this weird mental cue that I need to eat until I binge and I get sick. Otherwise I didn't enjoy it. So like doing some of the low carb keto type stuff, it's like, okay, I eliminate some of those foods for me that I have weird associations to, if that makes sense. Like I would think if you're eating something like fish or, even like some lean steak or something, like it's hard to overeat on that excessively. It would be challenging. I could do it, but it's different than pizza and chips and popcorn.
Along that theme that you were speaking about, there's a quote that I have heard, and I'm going to butcher it here, but it's once you've kind of mastered one skill, you see the way through everything else. You know what I mean? You understand what it takes. Hey, if I want to learn how to play this guitar, if I want to learn how to weld, if I want to learn how to write, you understand that it's okay to start at the beginning. You recognize, hey, this is how I learned this one skill, and I can apply those principles over to this new skill that I'm trying to learn as well.
100%. I think something I've learned with that too, like to kind of piggyback on that, is that I had to get really picky about what things I took on, because you tend to get an obsessive personality with some of this stuff, and like you realize what it's going to take. So either I'm like all in or all out, because it's like I don't want to just casually do something. I want to be a master of it. And I realized, okay, that's going to take years. So it's like, do I want to do this at all? Because I don't want to be mediocre at something. So maybe to my detriment, I've avoided some things because I didn't think I'd ever be great at it. Like I've yet to play the guitar. I would love to do that. I don't own one, and I can see how much time that would take. So I'm like, maybe I better do something else.
The same way. Same way.
It's challenging. It's challenging.
To go off what you're saying, I had during when COVID first hit, here in California, I mean, the lockdown was legit, like there was a curfew, like everybody, like it was ridiculous. But anyway, I had a guy who lived across the street from me, and his name is John Fortune, and he was a badass musician. I mean, just this guy could play anything on any instrument. And I mean, he opened shows all across San Diego. And I mean, he's a phenomenal musician. And anyway, we didn't have shit to do, and he'd see me doing, practicing forms and shit in my driveway and whatnot. And so we started talking, and he became a student of mine, and we swapped. He would teach me guitar, and I would teach him martial arts. So by all means, I am not a great guitar player, but I can play a few things. I practiced for quite a bit, and I'm not too bad. But cool. What that taught me though is just like you were saying, like how, like if you master one thing, you can master everything. But just like in Kempo, we understand that it's like you become a master of what? The basics. And so I try to always have that mentality towards, no matter what it is I'm doing. I mean, like I'm an aircraft technician by trade, and I mean, if you don't know the basics of what basic tools are, like lefty loosey, righty tighty, I mean, understanding the basics of how you can never troubleshoot a jet engine if you don't know how it really works. You need to understand the theory of operation. That's what comes first. And it's just like that in Kempo. And it was just like that in learning the guitar. It's like, hey, don't worry about trying to play a bunch of riffs. Like learn 4 chords, G, G, D, C, and E, and learn how to transition between those. Learn how to hinge your hand. Learn strumming patterns. Learn the basics. And then as you get the basics down, then you can understand how to change the different pitch and use a capo and do this and do that. And, my one good student and good friend, Johnny, he's a fantastic guitar player, Granted, originally when I met him, he was supposed to teach me how to play guitar, and I was going to teach him Kempo. It didn't work out that way. But, I mean, but it's the same thing. It's being able to have that ability. Like I can't remember who said it or whatnot, but there's like a phrase like uncoachable kids become untrainable adults. You know what I mean? It's like, it's being able to like learning how to learn. That's an important thing. And, it's like, I teach mostly adults, and don't trust me. A lot of them are older than me. And I mean, how many people want to learn how to not get their ass kicked from somebody half their age? You know what I mean? It's like, there's no, you just got to put your ego at the door. And that's one of the problems with so many Kempoists and just martial arts guys in general, no matter what it is. They always have an ego, but if you just put the ego aside and learn, it's like, I'm willing to learn from anybody, or learn, because there's always somebody who knows something I don't. There's always somebody who's better at something than I am, and there's stuff that I have not a single clue about, but I'm the first one to say, I don't know anything about that. You know what I mean? It's like, and when it comes to martial arts, it's like, there's a lot, look, especially when it comes to styles, a lot of people think Kempo's crap and, it's karate and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, I don't try to sell it. I tell them, it's like, hey, this is just what I do. And this is what works for me. And I just have done it for a long time. And this is like my method. It's like, I'm open to learning other things, and I encourage everybody to go out and learn other things. I've been very fortunate to have martial arts instructors that have done that, like my, Mr. Wilson, he's my like primary instructor. He's always encouraged me to go train and do this and do that. I tell him, hey, I'm doing this, hey, I'm doing that. It's like, he knows what I do, and he's like, hey, just be the best that you can be. And
That's
it's
awesome.
the same way. Same thing with Chuck. I mean, Chuck, you guys all know Chuck. He's one of the greatest guys there are, and I mean, he's like,
100%.
He's like, if it works, it works. He's like, that's what matters. If it works, it works. Like, I think that all the American Kempo weapons techniques are absolutely garbage, and that's because I studied McNabb, and I know for real what you need to do if someone comes at you with a knife. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not.
Nobody's coming at you here. Nobody's coming at you here they're coming at you.
No, you want to haul
here.
out and neutralize it. You know,
This is where you insert the Jim Carrey karate
It's
school
not like
sketch
that,
from
like
Matthew.
Yep. It's like Rex Kwon Do. Grab my hand.
Yeah.
No, your other hand. With your other hand. No, that one. Okay.
My
Break through and walk away.
my daughter Allie got me some Rex Kwon Do pants as a Christmas gift a few years ago. I still have them somewhere. I thought about wearing them to the podcast today.
That sounds like a fantastic
I regret
daughter.
not wearing those. So I should bring those out to California next time, right, Joe?
Oh, absolutely,
for the
dude.
term, yeah.
Yep. Get a headband. Well, dude,
yes.
I'll tell you what. I went to a couple months ago. I went to Hugo Rojas's tournament. The CYKC,
The California Kids
Youth
Classic.
Karate Club. Yeah,
that's awesome.
And look, there was no American flag, right? But he had his old red, white, and blue gi. He hung it up, and that's what we all said the national anthem to. I thought that was so awesome. I was
That's
like,
awesome.
hell yes. It was
So
cool,
next step
man.
would have been he just left it on and just face me.
Oh, he wasn't even wearing it. He just hung it up, and everybody looked over and hand over their heart. I was like,
Oh,
this
that's
is
great.
Yeah, he's had that uniform forever.
Archie,
You know what? I wanted to buy one, and I can't find one online.
Man, that's old school 90s.
They don't make them anymore.
Yeah, I know. They you go back to the early 90s, man. They had some great gis out back in the day. Like that was one you could actually buy pretty easily back then.
Yeah,
that was I'm gonna get one. That's gonna be cool. I'm gonna look like Bill Wallace or Chuck Norris or something.
right.
Yeah,
So with
those
the
are
area
awesome.
you grew up in, did you have a lot of Tracy? I'm assuming in your area, Nathan.
So yeah,
with the checkered uniforms.
Yeah, I did see those here and there. Tracy schools, there used to be like 8 of them in St. Louis when I was a kid. Like they were probably the closest Kempo I could find kind of in my area. I never really had any interaction with those guys. And again, back then too, like we're looking at like pre-internet too. And this is something like you had a question on Facebook. I forgot who said who sent it, but what was training like in the 80s and 90s versus today? And I would say one of the biggest things that's changed is access to other people's stuff. Because when you think about it, back in the 90s, if you wanted to see another style and what it looked like, and you didn't have direct access to one of those people, you had to maybe spend like $40 and order a VHS tape from Panther, videos and have them mail it to you. It's like talking to some of my kids' students, like you guys have no idea what you've got with YouTube. It's amazing. Like you can see anything from anywhere in the world, which is maybe a double-edged sword. Because like I'll get on there and I'll follow people that were in the Olympics and like look at their kata and go, oh, I suck. it's like
what's that chick's name? Sandra something?
Oh, Sandra Sanchez. Yeah, she
was an Olympian.
She won the gold medal, I think, in the women's.
I'll tell you, have you seen the videos of that woman training? Like, Jesus,
oh yeah,
man.
I follow her on Instagram.
I go whoop my ass all over the mat, dude. I wouldn't even.
Dear listener, I believe it's Sandra Sanchez, and she's actually done some seminars here in the Midwest. I had a couple of friends that went and saw her, and yeah, I mean, if you watch, and what we're talking about, everybody's listening, World Karate Federation style kata competitions. It's what was in the Olympics last year.
I love watching that stuff. That's gorgeous.
It's some of the most beautiful kata I've ever seen. That's why in open karate tournaments, Kempo doesn't typically score very well. I know this because I do open karate tournaments, and I've actually opted to learn a couple of Japanese Okinawan forms to see if I can kind of match the cadence and rhythm a little bit. Because what happened was I found that I was screwing around with my Kempo forms enough and really messing with them to make them look a little more like a Japanese kata. I'm like, you know what? Maybe I'll just go learn another one and just leave the Kempo as Kempo and quit messing with it. But yeah, watching those guys, it's incredible. It's fun to watch that. But yeah, like I said, the double-edged sword is now that you can see everybody, now you can see like the top of the, like in the world, and then compare yourself like, oh, that's humbling. But which I guess is okay. But yeah, 80s and 90s back then, you couldn't do that. Like you just, you were kind of insular. You were kind of stuck in your own school, and whatever you had around there was all you had. And unless you're willing to pay for it and order some videotapes.
Well, not only that, the mentality of at least some of the instructors that I have known, they're very territorial in a lot of ways. They don't want you to cross train. My experience, like our instructor kept us very isolated from a lot of the other places for certain reasons, and I didn't notice that we were very good at what we did, but there was a lot that was lacking that I didn't discover until I actually made the effort and went out and explored not only the American Campo, some of the Tracy, and then I fell in with the 5.0 organization. And the whole reason I fell in with them, I was looking for a place to put my oldest son. So I happened to wander into a 5.0 school and ended up becoming friends with those guys, and decided I wanted to get a little bit of what they were offering, and became a part of their organization, and started progressing through their syllabus. And it really enhanced a lot of what I was doing in the Karate Connection, my time under Mr. Willie Aguilar doing American Kempo, and just the fact me and Joe, we lived in Southern California. We had just this big old smorgasbord of fantastic instructors that we were able to pull from. And it was really good.
Very lucky, very lucky.
Very lucky, because we were in the hot spot. All the best Kempo is in Southern California. And that's I'm kind of I will travel when it comes to Kempo. Like, I just moved up here to Washington, and I've been up to Seattle area. I've been up to Spokane. I've been out to Portland. I like to travel to get out there. It doesn't matter what the organization is. I've been up there with I met your instructor, Gary Wilson.
Yep.
Right? Great guy, Mr. A.C. Rainey, Todd Durgan. I met Mr. Hebler. Going out to Portland, I got to meet Mr. Epperton, and people out of Mr. Huck Clannis's lineage, and I learned something new every time I'm there, and
that's cool.
Just having that environment where, it's been very awesome, because they've allowed me to come in and to just get a little piece of what they have to offer. And I always want my place to be that way as well. Sorry, I just had someone walk into school and startle me. I apologize.
Archie's being attacked by ninjas. Quick, get him.
Right.
That would make for a very interesting show.
But what he was saying, but what he was saying is so true, though, man. Like, a lot of people, they just get like dead set in the politics, and they're like, this is the way, screw everybody else. It's like, I mean, I'm the same way. I came up and I met Archie, and he introduced me to the 5.0 guys here in Pasadena. I came up for a Just Speaking seminar. I've trained at I've competed at the Brian Hawkins Kempo tournament a couple times. In August, I'm going to go to the IKCs, and see what I can do over there. But that's the thing, is like just using the camaraderie of Kempo. It's like, it's not like everybody just thinks I don't know, that like the politics get really bad, and everybody thinks that it's like their way is the way. And a lot of people, like, especially us as Karate Connection guys, a lot of people are like, oh, they don't know shit. And it's like, yeah, let's go step in the parking lot. I'll show you what I know, buddy. But at the end of the day, it's like just, camaraderie, man. Kempo is Kempo, whether it's Tracy, whatever. It pretty much all comes from the same place, man. But especially like anything that comes from Ed Parker lineage Kempo, like, there's something you can learn from everybody. There really is,
Here's a question for you guys. I'm curious about this and see what you guys think. I kind of wonder if you look at other systems that have been around and like their curriculums have been a little more set over like centuries, like say, and maybe not Shotokan's not the best, but you look at Shotokan karate, I don't see as much of the political infighting, because like their founder was alive, 100 years ago, so I'm thinking we're not that far away from Parker, like in terms of time. Like, he passed away, 1990? So I mean, that's, in the grand scheme of martial arts, that's not a long time ago. And we have a lot of like living memory of him through all of our first generation teachers, whether it's like American Kempo teachers, whether it's Mr. Chuck Sullivan himself, or Vic LaRue or Hebler, or like whoever, your Speakman. And we've got a lot of these guys that were first generation. I kind of wonder, like, what is Kempo going to look like in another 30, 40 years when some of these guys are no longer with us, and it's down like we're the old dudes, like we're like the really old dudes. It's like I wonder if that's going to kind of even out a little bit. Maybe some of those politics will go away. Because I've had some other friends tell me that, yeah, man, Kempo guys, they are a rare breed when it comes to like their politics. It's
everybody thinks that their guy is the guy.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah,
everybody's guy is the guy. At least my mindset, and I'm sure through expressing this, I'm going to get a lot of feedback on it. But I don't think everybody had everything Parker was offering. You know, I think he put specific skills into specific people because that's where their mind was. I know I'm not the high flying, jump kicking Viking that I would like to be. You know what I mean? I've never been the most athletic, and I don't have the best skill at doing jumps and certain acrobatic things. You know, there's certain things that I gravitate to, so I'm obviously going to be better at those things. I'm sure it's the same way with yourself, Joe. It's the same way with yourself, Nathan. So there's guys out there, all they love doing is fighting. You know what I mean? So they're gonna take that Kempo and they're gonna customize it specifically to make that Kempo work in a fighting situation, tournament wise, whatever it is. Then you're gonna have the guys that are just like, this is just gonna be for self-defense. I want to get this over as quick as possible. Then there's the intellectuals that are, hey, you know, your pinky needs to be in this specific place for this reason, and you move this angle, and you're like, okay. And then there's guys that'll just throw you every single terminology in the book. You know, it's important to be well-rounded, but you have to realize that when you're doing this, not every one person had the whole complete picture. You know, and I've kind of, you know, being Mr. Sullivan, Mr. Hebler, they started way back in late 50s, early 60s. The Kempo they were learning is vastly different than what we were coming across in the 80s and up until Mr. Parker's death. You know what I mean? Yeah. And that's the whole reason Mr. Speakman kind of took and says, hey, now it's 5.0. You know, so, you know, the old joke of how many Kempo black belts does it take to screw in a light bulb? Do you guys know the answer to that?
Oh, I do. One to screw in the light bulb and everyone else is telling me that's not how Ed Parker would do it.
Exactly. So you know, yes, Mr. Sullivan was with Mr. Parker all the way from his beginning all the way up into his passing in 1990. But he necessarily kind of already had his mindset of, I want to get in, I want to get out. You're going to have the other guys that have that complete, at least what he had on paper. But there was a lot of stuff that I'm sure he had that he would show people that was different, you know, because he tailored the art to everybody, you know. Exactly. And if it's something that he tailored specifically to you, it's because maybe your body type, your mentality. You know, I was sitting with a very prominent Kempo black belt. He says, before I was able to get X rank, I think he was going to his 4th, you know, Mr. Parker made me go out and learn how to use a sword. So he set it up, he went out, he learned this other skill to incorporate and to find the principles of that. Just, you know, and I'm sure Mr. Parker, hey, what did you learn? And he'd probably pick that gentleman's brain. That's what I tell my students, myself. You know, they'll come in and I always tell them, look, I don't have all the answers. I don't. If someone tells you that they do, I encourage you to run away from that person kicking and screaming. You know, because their mindset isn't a place where you're going to get a lot out of it. I tell my students, ask questions. You know what I mean? I encourage you to. If you can stump me, that gets me excited. Because that means I get to go do the research. I get to ask my friends. I've asked you guys plenty of questions. Hey, what do you guys do here? Right? How do you handle this situation within your teaching? How do you guys handle this, you know, when you guys are doing X technique? Take those answers, accumulate them. You know, it may not be specifically for you, but for that one student that comes in, you're able to tailor the experience to that person to make them the best martial artist and the best person that you're possibly able to do.
I appreciate the conversation too, because then I have to ask, why is Archie asking this question? He's trying to trap me.
No, it's a lot of it is just we create the dialogue, right?
Right.
We create the dialogue. I know you guys get a lot of my messages, and it's I try to be the intellectual on a lot of things, but
especially the memes.
Especially the memes, but that's a whole different story, fellas.
Well, I mean, like what you were saying, you know, I mean, like, you know, you and I have definitely trained with a lot of different, you know, Kempo. We've been around a whole lot. And, you know, Nate, you have, you know, Taekwondo background, you've worked for Shotokan guys, other Japanese styles you've learned, you know. And that's the thing is, like, Kempo is meant to be tailored, a fine tailored suit, you know, tailored to the individual. You know, what I do may not work for everybody. And not everybody has the same background as me. You know, I'm primarily karate connection with American Kempo mixed in, you know, with a little bit of, you know, McNabb and jiu-jitsu and so on and so forth. So this is what I do. And I don't expect everybody to enjoy it. I don't expect that. Not everybody is me, and not everybody has had the training I have. not everybody's done what I've done. Neither have, just like I've not, I never trained under, with any of the Tatum guys or Huck Polanis or any of those guys. I never studied any Tracy, So, I mean, like I said, I think that the Kempo in the future should just continue to evolve. It's like what I believe, that less is more, just like, the rest of us IKCA guys, because even my American Kempo instructors believe that less is more. I'd rather you have 10 techniques you can fight with than 100 to fight you, Yeah. So,
Right.
I mean, that's just what I believe. And if somebody doesn't believe that, that's fine. Go ahead. But the thing is most people don't even know what the hell Kempo is. They really don't. So they didn't get it. They don't know the difference, whether it's IKCA or OKKA or IKKA. They don't know the difference. They have no idea. Most of them don't even know what Kempo is. 9 times out of 10, when I tell people I know Kempo, they're like, "Oh, isn't that where you wear the mask and hit each other with sticks?" I'm like, "No, that's Kendo." But you know what I'm saying? Most people don't even know. So just the thing is the thing is, just as long as you're teaching something to help other people and it works and you give somebody a strong base, most students are going to go out and learn something else anyway. They really are. But most people are going to, once they start learning, they're going to start exploring, and all you can do as an instructor is just like, hey, this is my way, whatever it may be. And then I wish you the best, to continue broaden your own knowledge, because that's what I've done, and that's what you guys have done as well.
A big thing that I like to do is I'll tell my students if there's something that you want to learn, like, especially in California, I was very fortunate. I had the opportunity to go out to train with a lot of different fantastic people, not just within the Kempo world, but my jiu-jitsu coach, my boxing coach, kickboxing, no capoeira guys. I know different people that offer different things.
I want to see Archie's capoeira.
It's not very good.
Oh, hell yeah.
It is not very good. I said I know, not that I do.
That'll be on Archie's Patreon. If you subscribe and you go past the paywall, then Archie will show you all the backflips.
No, we did for a while. We had a gentleman named Ramsey Luke that was coming in. He was teaching our academy some capoeira, and fantastic guy. I love him. And it was one of those things. Hey, you give it a shot. You see if that's something that you can find value in. For myself, it just wasn't something that my body was geared for. But a lot of the other gentlemen that were doing it within our school, they were able to incorporate some of that, and they were able to use it. So what I tell my students is, if you're looking to branch out and to learn something, let me know. Because down in LA, I had a network of people that I trusted, and that, to me, that's a huge thing. I don't want to send somebody to a place where they're just going to be a new piece of meat for their experienced guys to beat the snot out of somebody.
Right.
I've been in gyms like that where, this guy thinks he's the karate guy coming in. They're going to try to prove a point on him.
Yep.
It was you want to test the atmosphere of the place, the mentality of the instructor, so just moving up here, I'm starting to develop a good network of people that I really, really like and that I trust. And so that's something that I find to be really important. Just because a student comes to me to learn doesn't mean they're mine forever. I want them to succeed. I've gone out, I've trained the other things. I was very fortunate to spend some time doing jiu-jitsu with a gentleman named Gary Padilla. He is a black belt under Jean-Jacques Machado. And
cool.
He is the head jiu-jitsu coach with the Insano Academy. So I think he knows what he's doing. I've been very blessed to have that, right? I've had great boxing coaches, kickboxing coaches, and it's always been super respectful with these guys. You know what I mean? They understand, hey, yes, I've been doing Kempo for a long time, and I obviously have a specific skill set that I am pretty good at, but hey, he's humbling himself and he's coming to me to look for more answers and to make himself better. And as long as we kind of have that understanding, like that's a fantastic thing, and everybody grows. Because I've had these guys, well, what would you do in this situation? Well, I'd probably do this for this reason. I never thought about it like that. You know what? We're sharpening each other's iron, right? So
that's cool.
What has, over time, how have your guys' teaching changed?
Nate, you can go first.
Go, Joe. I was gonna say that too. How has it changed? That's a
Okay,
good question.
well,
no, that's not an answer.
okay, well, I'll go first for myself.
Sure.
Coming up under my instructor, I would see these other karate schools, and everybody is militant. They're on point. Everybody is really super focused from what I had seen. Because you watch the stuff in the movies, and we would the times that we would travel to other schools, and I didn't always see that on our own training floor under my instructor. And so when I would be in class, I would try to put expectation on these kids that I didn't even have for myself. They were never expected of me. And so over time, like, I just kind of developed, like, it's okay if the kid is testing and he is not perfect, it'll catch up. It'll catch up over time, and being around, sitting on certain boards, like, I've seen people that maybe I wouldn't have passed myself, but again, I wasn't having people advance anyways, because I put an expectation on them that wasn't realistic. And over time, I've changed that. I think that's something that has been a really good thing within my student base. We make it fun, and I've had young people within my academy that have been with me for over a year now, and they're killing it, But again, you kind of let some of this stuff slide, Is the toe heel line there? It's not really there. But I say neutral bow, they step back into the, they got their right hand forward for the right neutral bow. It kind of looks like a neutral bow. They're a kid, they're 5 years old. Okay, that's good enough for me, right? And then over time, it sticks. And that is the biggest thing that has changed within my teaching.
I would actually say my answer would probably be pretty similar to that, because I'm going to steal yours. Just copy your answer. No, Kempo, like the big principles and concepts, like and things like the techniques of Kempo, it's a good analogy I've heard is kind of like holding a big bowling ball. Like, you give a big old greased up bowling ball to an adult, they can hold 1, 2, maybe 3. But if you give it to a kid and you give them 1 or 2, they're going to drop it. So, you really got to stick it to one thing. So stretching out the pace of introducing those concepts, like focusing on quality of fewer things, has kind of been, I think, what's changed for me over the last 20 years of teaching or so. Because I used to try to dump a lot of stuff on kids all at once, because there's so much to it. It's like, how do you know when to stop? It's like drinking from a fire hose. It's like, no, turn the faucet down a little bit and let them get great at a little bit, and then build on there. So, like, for example, something like a foot replacement roundhouse kick. Like with my youngest kids group, I don't really like have them worry too much about the foot placement, like ball of the foot versus top of the foot. I'm like, just worry about chambering the knee properly and making sure the knee is in the right position and you're snapping the foot, the kick the right way. And then we'll build the different mechanics of that later as we go. So maybe that's kind of some of what you're talking about. Like,
yeah, just little things within what you're doing that you've noticed over time that, like, hey, this isn't working for me. How can I make this work for me? What I tell people is I hopefully am a better instructor today than I was 6 months to a year ago. Like anything else, teaching is a muscle. If you're not teaching and you're not interacting, you start to find that, maybe you don't have the same economy of words in explaining something. And that, to me, it's I have gotten down to at least I feel I have, to a pretty streamlined way of expressing a lot of the concepts and the way we do things and the way I present the information, especially, a group class versus maybe a private lesson compared to seminar style. Even the way that, like, you run a sparring class, because a sparring class is different than a regular curriculum class for the most part. How are you going to relay this information? And it's a constant thing that you should be polishing. You should constantly working away the rough edges. Will we ever be perfect? No. But over time, a lot of those rough edges will be gone. You'll be able to understand, okay, well, if a student is doing this maneuver in this way, I can bring that in for them by saying this, by having them work this drill, using the wall, whatever tools that we have available. it works really well that way. And it's just that constant willingness to get in there and to keep working your craft. You know.
Exactly. That's awesome.
What about you, Mr.
I
Joe?
would say, well, I would say for me, like I said, I mainly teach adults. I don't really teach kids, but dealing with everybody has different abilities, right? So I personally have a bad shoulder and I have a bad knee. So I have had to adjust even the way that I do my kempo, because I used to really love kicks. Like Nate, you were talking about the Ninja Turtles. Well, dude, I was part of the Power Rangers Karate Club in the '90s, brother. I love the Power
Nice,
Rangers.
man. Oh,
And
yeah.
you know, I wanted to be able to do those spinning kicks like, you know, Tommy Oliver, man. And so I used to like to do a lot of kicks and do stuff like that, and even just something as simple as like a spinning heel kick. You know, now I can't really do it because I can't put that kind of torque on my left leg, so I do all crossing back kicks, stuff like that. And as my shoulder isn't that bad, you know, I can still do raking hammer. But I had a student who her name was Jennifer, and she had a really bad shoulder, and she couldn't even do that. You know, she could not bring her elbow up past her ear. You know, so I had to like change the entire technique. You know, I teach it to where you come in down, and if you can't do that, you know, you could just do a riding, you know, or you know, riding stiff arm or something like that. You know, some way of hitting that target with a different weapon. You know.
Yeah.
You know, just, you know, changing little things like that. And I mean, I had one kid that, you know, he was very unflexible. You know, he couldn't kick, even though he stretched and tried. You know, he just like, you know, I mean, he wasn't doing enough. You know, so it's like, you know, teaching. You know, it's like, all right, well, now I'm going to make you do all the kicks slow, very slow until they're in the right targets. You know, just changing things up a little bit so that the student can adapt to it. You know, everybody adapts to different things. You know, and I personally have had to learn, like, I had a student who came over on Thursday, and you know, I was teaching him, you know, techniques on the dummy, and I was, you know, I did a couple rounds myself, and when I was done, my shoulder, I mean, it still hurts today. I got to ice it, this, that, and the other thing. So, trying to learn how to still be able to do effective kempo and do it the correct way, but to work around injuries. And you know, if somebody else has an injury, how to teach them to work around it. You know, like. You know, Archie was saying, you know, like the standard is, you know, as an instructor, the standard is going to be a little bit different for everybody, you know, because different people are better at different things than others, you know. So, you know, you have to capitalize on their strengths and just slowly help build their weaknesses, man. That's one thing that I've picked up on, you know, over the years of teaching. But like I said, mostly I teach adults. So, you know, you take them kids, you can grab them. Kids are flexible, man. You grab them by the leg and put it up against the wall and crank them. You know, it's like, suck it up, kid. You know, you can't do that. You got a 35, 40-year-old dude. You know, it's shit. You know, you can't do that. So, but that's just my experience.
So the last
good.
thing
That's
I'd
good.
like to kind of ask is, you know, this whole meeting and gathering that we just had, and I want to do a lot more of these with other people. But it's to inspire somebody that, you know, to go out and to teach whatever their passion is. You know, if you've got a skill, it doesn't matter if it's martial arts. Martial arts happens to be the closest passion to myself, right? Because I've been doing it for 23 years. You know, these are the relationships I've built over my life. But, you know, say it's somebody that teaches guitar, somebody that even maybe teaches a trade, carpentry, you know, somebody wants to get in and learn how to do a certain art, you know, project, they want to be a painter, you know. What would you guys recommend to somebody that has a skill that isn't quite sure how to begin teaching that skill to somebody else?
I think my best advice would be to surround yourself with people who are already doing something that you want to do. Something for me, like getting to talk to, you know, you guys and some other, you know, martial arts instructors, even outside our discipline, has been really invaluable because I'm seeing where they're already being successful, and I can use them as a guide, or at least as a point of reference that I can use kind of to launch into what I want to do. Kind of working and doing some stuff like with Vic LaRue back in the day, like that very much influenced how I started teaching my small group classes when I was like 18 years old. Like started teaching very much the way he was teaching me, you know, in like terms of how I would set things up, how I would run the class, how I would give instruction and feedback. So yeah, surround yourself with those people that are already there. It's like what's the phrase? It's like you're the average of the five people you surround yourself with most. I might be butchering that, but
well, it's
yeah,
kind of along the line of, you know, if you hang out with 10 millionaires, you'll be the 11th. If you hang out with 10 deadbeats, you'll be the 11th. Correct.
Yeah.
Nice. So what does that say for Archie hanging out with us, Joe? I'm concerned. This could be a problem.
Comment. You're just gonna be the third of, you'll just be another nerd.
Oh, dang it.
Karate nerds, man. It's all good.
So what do you think, Big Joe?
Well, I mean, you know, to go back to what I had said earlier, man, you know, my instructor told me, hey, if you want to be better at what it is you do, teach it to somebody else. You know, like he made it a requirement that I teach once a week, and I did for 10 years before I even taught on my own. You know, I never.
That's wonderful.
You know,
wonderful.
Yeah. Yep. I taught Friday night sparring at American Family Kempo for give or take 9-10 years. You know, rather as long as I was in town. You know, and I mean, he makes everybody teach. You know, I mean, every black belt that comes out of that school, once they get the black belt, or actually even before black belt, you know, brown belt, he'll have them helping with the kids, whatnot. He makes it a requirement to teach, and it's only so that, you know, you understand things better if you teach it. You know, so right. I mean, to just get better at whatever it is you do, man. I really believe that. You know,
did you start teaching at brown belt before?
When I came to Mr. Wilson, I was already a black belt under my father.
Okay. So,
you know, in Chinese Kempo, you know, granted, whatever. So believe it or not, the way it worked out was I went to the American Open in San Diego, run by Joe Ellis, and Gary coached me through it, and I took first place. It was a pretty big tournament, and anyway, after that, he was like, okay, he was like, I'll make you a deal. I'll give you a private lesson once a week if you teach once a week. So I was like, sounds good. So, and that's kind of how that works. You know,
that's awesome.
And very thankful for it. You know, it taught me how to teach. You know, taught me how to explain things, how to have patience. I'll tell you one thing. I'll tell you a funny story. So, and this is another reason I don't teach kids. So, like I said, I was in the Marine Corps and whatnot, and he asked me to teach a kids class one time, right? And so anyway, I'm explaining things to these kids, and all the kids are sitting down in the corner, and this one little kid, as I'm watching him as I'm talking, but he's picking his nose, and I watched him put a booger on the mat. And so I walked over to him, and I was like, "Hey, pick that up." He picked it up, and I was like, "Now put it back." And he's like, "What?" I was like, "Put it back." He's like, I was like, "Stop! Don't put it in your nose. Just go wash your hands." But anyway, that kid was terrified by it. And next thing you know, Gary's calling me, and he's like, "What the hell did you do to this kid?" I was like, "I was just kidding." You know? Anyway, I didn't teach kids anymore. So, but
the first and only kids class.
Yeah, pretty much. But anyway, it's just things like that. You know, I mean, I've taught kids over the years. You know, I have worked with some kids, and you know, but usually about teenagers. But that's the thing. It's just by being in that environment, and you know, being kind of like forced into teaching. You know, I mean, it made me understand the system better because, like I said, in Kempo, what we all study, you know, it's all about the basics. And I believe it's like that in anything, whether it's guitar or, you know, like aeronautics or whatever it is you do. You know, you got to know the basics, and being able to explain them in a digestible manner for other people to be able to interpret, you know, it's not easy, you know, and it does take practice, you know. So, I mean, the question is, you know, what would you say to anybody who's, you know, to get them in to start teaching something? It's like, you will know whatever your craft is better if you teach it to somebody else. I really believe that.
100%. 100%.
Mr. Nathan, you have the floor.
I do?
Indeed.
You know, yeah.
Just mimic. Joking.
Anyway, what I was just saying though is my dad's the one who taught that to me. And, you know, when I teach that system to other people, I swear to God, it's like, I hear him telling me what I would used to do wrong. And, you know, he used to nitpick me so much that now I kind of got it. You know, I really enjoy teaching the IKCA system for that reason, because it's nostalgic to when I was a kid, you know. And but anyway, then I also got, you know, every time I'm going fast as hell, I hear Gary telling me to slow my ass down. So, you know, it's just one of those things. You know, you pick up different things from different people, and by teaching it, you know, it's a refresher because you remember the things that you were taught when you're teaching other people.
Right. It's I remember something that my instructor, Mr. Deloa, said when I was getting my orange belt. And he goes, it doesn't matter how high up on the black belt scheme that you get, your instructor will always have that little thing to nitpick on you. Well, your finger was out of place. Be like, yes, where it was, you know.
Yep.
So that's something I always kind of I'll come back and I'll relay that to my students as well. It's like even Sensei Archie has stuff he needs to work on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
100%.
Right on, man.
Okay.
what is your advice, Mr. Nathan?
I mean, I would kind of again piggyback on what Joe was saying, that like teaching like definitely helps you learn to yourself the second time. I mean, working with kids, you know, to his point, is a very different animal, and it does take a huge degree of patience, and you have to communicate things in a very different way. But it's some of the same benefits for the instructor, like giving you a chance to stop and be able to articulate something, like means that you really understand it. So that's yeah, I mean, that's invaluable. And again, it's quality over quantity. Like if you can get a kid to have a really good set of blocks and maybe one or two like defensive strikes, you know, that they can use, then you've done your job. And I think, you know, if we talk about the Kempo politics and some of the stuff we've talked about earlier, that's, you know, kind of infamous or famous in the Kempo world, I think if we can put the best construction on it for people and we can like shrink it down to the instructor and student relationship, and as long as we are doing our very best to serve our students, you know, to meet their needs and to help them set their goals and reach their goals, whether it's, you know, protect themselves and know how to, you know self-defense, or, you know, be that great tournament competitor they want to be, or whatever it is, it's like we can help them do that, then our mission's accomplished, and we're helping make the world a better place, you know, that one kid at a time or one student at a time, whether he's 45-year-old dad. I mean, I've had some adults, you know, in our club too, had some father sons and stuff, and like I love working with those guys. That's awesome. And I think I have a whole newfound respect for people that get into this as adults, because I grew up as a punk kid, and I had summer breaks in school where I could go in my backyard and I could work on my forms and I could whale on my dummy. My first dummy I made myself off the old plans on the old orange belt tape. So
PVC, yeah.
Yeah, if the listeners, if you ever catch the Karate Connection videos, you can actually watch them for free, I believe. Yeah, I think you can watch some of them for free on the Karate Connection website, which is IKCA.com. Is that? Yeah, check it out. Anyway, they have these old dummies that were made out of carpet and duct tape on like a PVC pipe frame or a steel frame, depending on which one you had. And I didn't even have like money for a base, so I just tied him to a tree in my backyard, and I would just wail on him all summer long. So the point of that is, like, adults, like, you've got kids and you've got jobs and you've got to, you know, live out your passions of living indoors and eating food, and that takes a lot of time. So to, like, take your time and take a few hours a week and come train in a martial art, whether it's jiu-jitsu or kempo or whatever you're doing, I got a lot of respect for those guys, because I don't have any time. I don't know how they do it. It's amazing. So it's yeah, I think it's such an honor and a privilege as instructors to get to work with people wherever that in life, you know, and for whatever their goals are. Because I think one of the most rewarding things for me in teaching, and I don't know if I'm getting to the question, but the seeing, like, especially in the kids, seeing that confidence that it builds over time, learning the techniques, learning this material, it gives them the confidence that they can walk into a situation, they can walk into school with their head held high because they know how to defend themselves if they need to. And this beautiful thing that happens is that they don't get picked on, and they don't have to use this stuff because they carry themselves in a way that a bully's not going to respond to. They're going to leave that kid alone, which is awesome, because again, you're making their lives better, and then you're helping them learn that skill of learning how to learn something, how to develop and put that time into a skill. We have this wonderful thing with the belt systems and our styles of karate and kempo, is that you have a tangible reward system for seeing that hard work pay off. So then when you grow up and you go on to other endeavors that might not have those tangible rewards, you still know how to use the skill. You've learned the skill of learning skills, and that's awesome.
Yeah, awesome, guys. Well,
Totally agree.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you guys taking the hour and a half out of your day to get on here and to hopefully inspire some people to teach and to give back to mostly the community. You know what I mean? It's like,
yeah, absolutely.
And that's why I wanted to do this for a while. I've been talking about it, and I hope to have lots and lots of other people to inspire others. So I'll let you guys get some closing thoughts in there. If you guys want to put out your information, if people are looking for you, you know, so that people can find you if they want to get some work in with you, please feel free to do so. Your school, you know, all that information.
I'm glad we're episode 1. It's only going to get better from here, man. You cannot fall off the bottom. So this
I know. Hopefully I get better. I'm working on it.
No, this is fun. This is a good conversation. This is kind of like sitting back, having some beers or something, and talking this nerd Kenpo talk, which is great. But and kind of getting into, you know, like, you know, come in for the Kenpo and stay for the self-actualization or something. Because really, I think that having a chance to share the art and do what we do is, I mean, it's wonderful. Like I would, it's my favorite job. I mean, I love getting to do what I do. Like the little kids are awesome. The big kids are awesome. The adults are fun. It's, but yeah, giving back, like you said, giving back, giving a chance for people to actually learn a valuable skill that can protect their lives. Like working with my daughters on this is, you know, it's taken that to a whole new level for me, because like I have a responsibility for them, and I want my daughter, when she goes off to college, to be able to protect herself. And like, there's a lot of weight on that. I want her to have every skill and every tool in her toolbox she can possibly have to be successful and, you know, to be safe. And I think that the more we can give that out, I mean, you look at some of the stats of like assault and violence, you know, like stuff, you know, for women in particular, like it's astounding. And it's like, the closer we can get that to zero, the better. And I think we have a chance to actually help make an impact there. And I think, you know, whether it's personal trainers or senseis or whatever it is, I think we are kind of on the front lines of actually helping, you know, people better themselves in a really tangible way. And that's just because that's what we got growing up. Like we actually like got those ourselves, you know, like I think most of the accomplishments I've made in life, you know, college or whatever, I think a lot of those I can directly point back to my training in Kenpo in particular as a catalyst for helping make those things a reality. Because I think without like learning that discipline and getting that ability to focus and concentrate at least a little better than I had before, I don't think I could have done some of those things. And I think it's a real honor and a privilege to actually share that with other people. And having got to spend, you know, training for 30 years and teaching for, you know, over 20, that's been awesome, and proud to be a part of it. Proud of you guys too. Good job.
So if somebody wants to find you, how can they get a hold of you?
Oh, I don't want them to find me. No, I'm kidding. So we're probably
OnlyFans.
the premiums. I need a. Oh gosh, hang on. Where do you find me? So saintpeterkarate.com, spell out Saint. That's our main website landing page. That at least has all the contact for how to get a hold of us and get information on classes and stuff here in St. Peter, Illinois. If you're in Central Illinois, come check us out. We're right in the middle of the cornfield. Like I said, about 90 minutes east of St. Louis. So small town. So unlike you guys, since you guys have all these other Kenpo schools you can go visit, I don't. So I just tell everybody I'm the best in town, because I'm the only in town. There's actually a little video of me and Jeff Speakman. I had Speakman say that on a video on my Instagram. He said he's the best in St. Peter. But I digress. So saintpeterkarate.com. You can find us on Facebook too, at Murphree Karate. Archie, I'm sure we'll put links in the description or something, because
we'll get those up for you.
Yeah, appreciate that. And then
are you offering any sort of online classes if somebody would like to reach out to you? Or
not currently online, like group classes or anything, but I am occasionally available for private lessons. We can do through Zoom or like FaceTime or something. And also, you know, anybody's always welcome to come into the dojo, stop by and jump in on a class. You know, I love visiting with people, have good times, and gotta get you guys out here sometime too. That'd be fun. That'd be fun. Yeah. So be in touch. Love to see everybody and do some Kenpo or whatever we're gonna do.
Mr. Joe, parting thoughts, please.
Nothing, man. Just, you know, I really thank you for having me. You know, being the first one, you know, being the first episode you're doing, you know, awesome job, man. It was a very good conversation, you know. And like I said, you know, I love both of you guys. I've gotten to spend time on the mats with both of you. You know, both of you two are phenomenal martial artists, and I'm, you know, really proud to, you know, have you guys as my fucking excuse me, it's my Kempo brothers, you know, sorry about the language, you know. Like I said, I only teach adults, so don't worry about me cussing in front of your kids because, you know, I won't be around. But anyway. No,
How can people get a hold of you, Joe?
You can find me sometimes on Facebook and Instagram. I try to stay off my social media. I'm not a big fan of social media unless I have something to post. I teach privately only. I really only teach private lessons. I don't have any group classes because, you know, everyone's different and so on and so forth. And just to point out, I'll eventually probably have another school again at some point, but right now I don't. So, but if you do need to contact me, you can contact me at Kempo Joe Karpinski on Instagram or Joe Karpinski on Facebook. So you can find me there. If not, or you can hit up Mr. Archie or Nate.
But I will be putting
send them your way.
I'll put up your guys' information at the end of this video, so anybody that wants to get a little more information on the programs you guys are offering, if they happen to be in your areas, then they can reach out to you and get some time in with you. I really appreciate you guys taking the time out to do this, especially on the very first episode of the Sensei Showdown show.
Well, I dig it, man.
Setting the bar, man. It's awesome.
That's right.
It can only go up from here, boys.
That's right. That's right. Great job, Archie. Thank you.
Awesome, guys. So again, thank you so much for coming on.
All right.
I really appreciate it. You guys have a great night.
All right, guys.